Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Michael and I are here to talk about an excellent topic, one that's been coming up quite a few times as we're talking to you, our partners, our customers, around a very important question. So we're going to cover it today, and that is how to choose an MDR provider. And we'll kind of center this around 5 questions to ask. All right, before we get there, hi, I wanted to do an introduction. My name is Jim Wagner, VP of Cybersecurity Products and Services here at Enable. And with me is...
Hey, I'm Michael Wells. I'm a sales director and quote senior cybersecurity strategist here at Enable. So, been working with the Enable team for quite a while on their cybersecurity practice.
Yeah, doing an awesome job. So today, let's set a little background expectation of what we're going to talk about, where we set the stage for our next slide, and challenges for MSPs and your customers. So for you and your customers, things that we're hearing as we engage on a daily basis, talking to you directly. We're at conferences like when we're at our recent conference that was in Berlin, Empower. We're hearing from you, and they seem to resonate. And one of them that came up personally just this last week was like talent shortage. I was talking with a partner, and we're talking about our solution with MDR and the services that they're offering, and also asking about the things that we're offering. And one thing that came up is they were actually very apologetic as we were walking through the platform. The challenge they had, they're like, listen, our specialists today that we had, recently have left. And so today when we're talking with Jim, we're really having to come up to speed on some of the capabilities that we're offering. So they were very thankful for some of the things that we had on the back end and how we improved that. But it was really keen there where I felt like this MSP was really needed the guidance that we could offer. But one thing they were doing is they were responding through ransomware, running through their playbook and creating a playbook. And they just talked about the cyber threats that are out there and how they've changed, how ransomware is impacting their customers, how they need to really respond to the new threat landscape. And by response, they were talking about quality and speed, making sure there weren't false positives, they were not taking down anyone or containing any environment, and really moving at line speed. And then finally, the last sort of situation that we see MSPs facing is compliance. If the new regulations are coming out, whether it's the European regulations or it's the US regulations, just global regulations coming out, and how do they comply? What can they offer their customers when it comes to compliance? And so overall, that leads to quite a few challenges.
Yeah, Jim, I think that's a great point. One of the things that I in my conversation I'm having just around talent shortage, it's not just about the hiring. It's about what we're asking our teams to do in lieu of being able to find true cybersecurity operators. And I think that's something that we're a blind spot that a lot of our partners, sometimes are thrust into a position where they're asking people who don't have the credentials or the talent or the experience of handling cybersecurity risk. They're more of network operators or, really PC operators. And so I think that sometimes is something that's overlooked. And I think it's a bit unfair about what we're asking some of our teams to do in the lack of that shortage and that talent.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Given the background, I'll hear a lot of our customers will talk about, hey, I started out as break and fix, or I was running a knock. And then running a knock or doing break and fix is quite different than managed detection and response. So different capabilities, different skill sets are needed. I see it as a different mindset when you're thinking about, okay, I'm going from managing an environment to protecting an environment and responding to make sure that the cyber threats out there and everything that encompasses are always at the forefront of your mind and how you protect them.
Yeah, agreed.
So here was a survey that Canalys sent out asking their customers what is really the top threats to MSP operations. And it resonates with what we're seeing and what we're hearing from them directly. So 54% said talent acquisition and retention, just like you mentioned, Michael. Any comments?
No, I think finding and retaining talent is tough to do anywhere in this market for any skill set. But specifically, I think around a true cybersecurity professional who's been trained to isolate threats, to find threats, threat hunting. These are just they're rare skills to come by.
Yeah, I think about the pressure that all of us are under. So being in the security space, there is a constant pressure where you have to be 100%. You have to protect the entire environment, because if we mess up, then our customers, their businesses go down. There are definite impact there. So the stat they always give is the threat actors, they just have to be successful once, and we have to be successful 100% of the time. So it makes sense this is top of mind. So this also resonates the evolving cyber threats. So half of the survey respondents said, "Yep, absolutely." And then one thing that doesn't quite come up with others, but makes sense here for MSPs, is growing competition. How do they differentiate themselves? What services can they offer that their customers can come to them, and someone else is offering, they might lose that customer.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I think in the conversations I've had with MSPs across the globe, they realize this is a direction that they need to move into because their competition is. We're seeing so much of these organizations coming together to even to merge, to offer services that they couldn't do so on their own. So I think the acquisitions have grown because of the need to increase technology, increase their cybersecurity posture with their customer base, because customers ultimately, whether it be through cyber insurance or whether it be through they've experienced a breach and they've had to bring in a third party, they're going to be introduced to new providers. And so the more that you can stay in front of them with these kinds of services, the stickier you are.
That makes sense. I think with all of our customers, one thing that comes top of mind is ransomware. And I think, what we see is ransomware really has changed the paradigm by which we need to respond. So thoughts here, Michael?
Yeah, actually, this quote came from Gartner, which is interesting because as you know, there's still not a magic quadrant for MDR, which confuses some customers. But they're acknowledging that the ransomware is driving the demand for 24/7 managed detection and response. So the issue is not going away. It's not becoming easier. It's becoming more complex. But I think when you look at the managed detection and response market, MDR market, and see what that is, it's a plethora of acronyms. And so when we look at what's out there, and I think about our MSPs or our customers when they're evaluating needs for their environment, there's confusion between EDR, MDR, XDR, whatever DR you want to put out there in the market space. And so I think that the market's a bit fuzzy-eyed on what true managed detection and response is. And so I think we have an opportunity to really clarify that market space and help our customers and help our partners understand those differentiations and why they need it. I think, the market being the way it is, we're also oftentimes sacrificing control. And this is something that we can talk about a little bit further as we go into the topics. But, when you're bringing in a security provider to your table or to your organization, you want to make sure that you're retaining control of your data, that you have access to your data. And I think sometimes these services kind of isolate you away from your data and give you just kind of outcomes based in a reporting fashion, rather than actually allowing you to participate in the process and see what's going on. And I think that's important as well for organizations, because there's a fear of giving away the comment, the keys to the kingdom, if you would. And then you could, yeah, go ahead.
No, go, Michael.
Well, I said you probably could hit more upon the MSP integration than I can, but I think that this is something that I've seen in conversations over and over again. We have a tech stack. Are you going to adhere to my tech stack, or am I going to have to go and do 3 different panes of glass, 3 different portals? What is it that I'm looking at? How are you integrating with my environment and helping me serve my customers?
No, you're absolutely right. And it comes to the tech stack, is the number one question that we see is like you're saying, I've got a tech stack. Can we integrate that in? Can we make sense of it? Can we apply security operations? And then from what I'm seeing is really its key is, does this tech stack I have offer up enough visibility that I can find the new threats that are out there? Does it give me really that illuminate, the endpoint, the network, wherever the threats are navigating through the network of my customers that I'm managing? Can I properly protect them? But one thing I also wanted to call out is when we were in front of our partners and we asked them the question, that was really a surprise for me. I mean, is we asked them the question, how many of you have been subject to a ransomware attack? And what we saw was more than half the room raised their hand of being subject to a ransomware attack for themselves or for their partners, which I thought was surprising, as expected to be 1 in 10 or 2 and or 1 in 5. But more surprising, we asked them the question is how many of you paid the ransom, which we always advise don't pay a ransom because they're going to come back. They may not decrypt the files. And that's where about half the room, I think it was like 40 to 50% of the room raised their hand and said, yes, they paid the ransom. Now that's scary. I see it as extremely scary for those who are thinking about MDR, but also it is an opportunity. It's something that you need to realize that is where the market is. That's what customers are probably expecting to get some support for and are going to need some level of services.
Jim, it's funny. I would ask that same question as I was touring around. How many of you have suffered a business impacting ransomware breach? And, you get a few hands that would come up, but then I would ask the question, how many of you know somebody that has gone through a business impacting breach? Well, and every hand went up. And I said, well, we've got to disconnect. Yeah, it's survey.
That's funny because they're not admitted. It wasn't me, it was somebody else. All right. All right. So let's go into our topics of our questions. So question 1, I think is a pretty good one. I think we've got 5 questions that you're going to answer here, and we'll talk about a little bit for everyone. But question 1 is, do we buy or build an MDR, managed detection response technology and service? So it's a whole buy or build. So what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's it's the age old question, and I think you need to start backwards. What is the outcome that you're looking to achieve by buying or building? And I think the outcome should be the same whether you buy or build, which is our business should not or cannot suffer a business impacting breach. That's the outcome. So then working from that backwards, really looking at evaluating the cost and the ROI for you on that. It could be that building is the way because you've got the time, you've got the talent, you've got the equity to put forward a really world-class product. And if that's the case, then congratulations. I think you're in a unique spot. I think for the majority of the organizations that I run into, they're the cost to not only do the initial outlay, but the maintenance, the continuing to hire, as we mentioned, retaining the talent, et cetera, just becomes, an exorbitant cost that they can't absorb while the outcome still needs to be there. And I think that's just really, it's going to come down to a personal question, but I start with the why.
Well, let's go back here. Let's go a little bit into the cost. So what sort of costs are you referring to? Say you want to build an MDR service yourself as opposed to buy it, someone else does it for you. So what are some of the costs you're thinking about when it comes to building that?
Sure, absolutely. And I'm not going to throw a number out there because I've heard wildly different numbers, from everywhere from $10 million to, X million dollars. And I think the cost is going to be different for each customer. But if you're looking at a 24/7 operation, I think the average, is what, 8 personnel that you need that can cover 24/7. That's assuming you're not going to give them any PTO. So you've got to personnel costs right off the bat, but then you've got the tools as well that you need to bring in, and so you got another tech stack, another tool set that you've got to deploy. And then, of course, the training and everything that goes in behind that. Interestingly enough, AdLumen was built for security operations centers. It was built as a security operations platform to be adopted by security operations centers to kind of shorten that cycle to gain all those tools. So putting a tool set together, best of breed, if you would, of our technology, so that a SOC operator could potentially run their own service, and that's how we came to market. But as we often see in these situations, some of the initial operators came through later and said, this is really, really good stuff, but we could use some help. And so that's when we deployed or implemented the MDR services along the platform.
Yeah, one thing when it comes to costs that I see it has happened, I have seen companies that start their own MDR service, build off their own stack, and usually it starts off as a SIM and data is being imported in to some location. So then they're creating their own ways of viewing and looking at the data, making sure they can actually find threats, and then they're creating response systems on whatever tools that are being deployed in an environment. And usually they start small, but then as they grow, one of the indicators are, okay, as they grow, their customers and partners grow, they're not consolidated on a single tech stack. And so now they have other applications. Then the threatscape, they need to keep track of the different threats that are out there and create new detections. So I've seen it done effectively with teams that have gotten pretty large. But I can see that usually homegrown solutions, whoever authored or created that homegrown solution, they will, it becomes, if they leave, then they're lost. And it's like, okay, then what do they do? So I can see it's definitely doable. And then I've seen them build their own services on top of it. And like it said, there isn't a single price. Is it 100,000 you spend? Is it 500,000? Is it 3 million? But the costs do continue to grow. So I see that.
Yeah, and you just brought up a really good point about some of the hidden costs as well. And one of the so storage is being a big part of that, right? When you have those logs, where do you put those logs? How are you covering the cost of the ingest? And now we're seeing, obviously with the raise and utilization of AI and our posture, AI has a cost as well, right? So these are things that that can kind of you may not count on in your initial build plan, if you would.
Yeah, every MDR service that I see in spaces like in the space that we're in, it's data science and AI, and how do you improve and how do you respond and how do you do things at line speed. So good answer. So buy or build. Now, what are the core features of an MDR service provider? So let's say a decision has been made, you're going to buy, you're going to build, you did one of them. What are those core features in MDR service?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it just a bit ago, but right, the core. I mean, if we're looking at MDR at its heart, you've got to be able to detect and to respond. I mean, that it's in the name, managed detection and response. And I think that this is the bare minimum. You've got to have the ability to ingest signals or noise from your infrastructure, and we can debate about whether you need every bit from every firewall, from every switch, from every endpoint, right? There's different ways to get this data, but you have to be able to get the data. You have to be able to normalize the data, and then you have to be able to respond against that. And at its core, that is managed detection response. So I don't know if I could go too much more into that, but what are your thoughts?
No, I look at it sort of the capabilities kind of frame it, of course, and from the Adlumin or other MDR providers that I've worked with directly. But the first thing that comes down to is, like you're saying, it's like all of the telemetry, all the security products or the networking products, cloud products, you need to be able to ingest those into a single repository so then you can make sense of it. You need to apply the logic on top of it of the detections, and then response is, what do we do with this information? Can I contain? Can I do so quickly? Can I delete? Can I reset passwords? So things on services where you want to touch the devices you're pulling input from and do it across the entire environment, not just really a single endpoint or just endpoints, so one vector. But thinking about it more thoroughly as I look at our service, if our customers have questions, you want to be able to call up someone at any point in time. If I've been attacked and it's 3 a.m, you want to have that on-call line. You want to be able to provide a response. You want to be able to provide a plan. You want to do a write-up of what happened. You want to give suggestions on how to do improvements on the next time. So overall, it's thinking about it from an end-to-end scenario, from ingestion to response to analysis to future-proofing the environment. At scale, always on, always live, always able to respond.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, because at any further conversation outside of the detection and the response would be feature comparisons, and we could spend all the rest of the day talking about the feature comparisons. But just coming back to the response component, that has just got to be the number one bare minimum, and I think that's one of the ways that we really think of the market in terms of is it a notification or is it a true response? And so like Adlumin includes security orchestration response built into the platform. So SOAR. So we automate many of the things, the responses that we see over and over again. And again, for me, having the response component, whether it be human, whether it be automation, whether it be through the run books, whatnot, or even through your own intervention as an operator. That has to be at the bare minimum. It can't just be a notification.
All right, let's see what we get about question 3. Be surprised on the topic. What are the top criteria for selecting an MDR provider?
Yeah, gosh, for me, it all starts with the relationship. What is your relationship with the provider like? I've kind of alluded to earlier about the access to data, and I think this is a really big piece of what I look for is transparency. Is my relationship with my provider a transparent one, where I have access to the platform, I have access to how my data is being handled and what's being done on my behalf, and that relationship has got to be key. And I think that's I mentioned before about sometimes the technology can edge us away from the conversation or edge us away from the table in terms of the decision making and the processing. And I think, a good MDR provider is going to be inclusive. It's going to draw you into the conversation. It's going to draw you into the process and have an understanding of where, especially as an MSP, you're, honoring your customer relationships. These are things that I think that are very important to me.
Now, I'd like how you talk about the access to the data. We can see that coming into play where it's not only just access to the data, but we do see that we have partners who are in different journeys of doing MDR. Do they want to outsource it? Do they want someone to um, take it over completely? Do they want to co-manage it? Do they understand what type of business that they're in? Having an MDR who might not understand what it's like to be an MSP and how you have lots of clients that you're responsible for and that your business depends on their business success. Uh, so I really like how you talk about that in the relationship, how you talk about that in the access to the data. So all of that, as opposed to just being a black box, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we could get into features and feeds and the different technologies that are out there, but at the core, that relationship I think sets the tone for everything that you're going to do, because this is difficult work and it's important work. We're protecting our customers' livelihoods here, and so the more that we can work together and really lean on the strength of that relationship is important. Then you've got other things that we've already hit on, right? Do you respond? Do you respond in a timely manner? Are you there, like you said, at 3 a.m., taking action on my behalf? Do you have the capability to adopt to my technology stack? And I think that's a really big one that sometimes gets overlooked. A lot of the services out there are built around their product set, and then they invite you to participate in that, which could mean additional license costs. It could mean some restructuring of your environment, some different ways of doing things, versus a Lumen that looks at your environment and says, how do I adopt and how do I adhere to your technology stack, to what you do, and give you the same outcomes? So really looking at it from the platform approach rather than just a service delivery, if you would.
Yeah, if I also had to answer this question, what I would think about is top criteria. It's like, will the MDR service grow as I grow and my needs grow? So maybe it starts out as managed detection and response, but let's think, you might be thinking about proactively. Let me identify the systems that are out there, and knowing that there are at-risk systems and you need patching. So vulnerability management is a good example, where identifying apps that are out there. If you're just responding to threats and not getting a hold of it, not being proactive, then you're always going to be in a response situation. So maybe you want to identify risky apps and get them patched. So I just think about additional services generically. Think about additional services that the MDR may be offering. Are they, as a top criteria? Think about the alert response being very, very quick. Think about, do they do full investigations and give you enough information where you fully understand the scope of the attack? Do they proactively monitor the environment 24/7? Do they do hunting, meaning they'll find threats even if there's not an alert there? Will they make recommendations on how to better protect yourself? And then, like we mentioned before, applications, so important, of not having to switch over 100% to their stack when they come up with the service, but because that could be costly, but being able to enhance your stack or be able to be flexible enough or open enough to manage the technology stack that you have today?
It's a great point. And you said something earlier that's really worth repeating, which is the security journey, right? And I think all of us are on a different place in our security journey, whether you be the MSP yourself or whether you be the end customer. And I think having a platform that can not only grow but can meet you where you're at now, but have an understanding that in 2 years your security posture is going to change because you're going to mature in your security needs, whether it be through your environment or whether it be through just sheer need, you will mature in your security model. And so having a platform that can grow with you and not have to force you into, well, I bought, this at stage A, but now I'm going to need to buy this at stage B because it won't move with me. That's not cost effective and it's disruptive in the environment. So I think that's a really good point you made.
Yeah. And one other call out just to further elaborate on was the openness or technology agnostic. Why do you think that's key?
Yeah, because that is what allows us to adhere to the stack, right? And so I think customers and partners have made relationships with their vendors with technology that they love, and they've built operations around some of that technology. So to come in and say one of two things: one is you bought the wrong technology, you need to buy this, or otherwise I can't give you security services. So that's a bit of a difficult conversation. But also from a pure outcomes conversation, right? When I started with, the outcome is we need to not have business impacting breaches. Can we do that with the technology stack that you bring to us? And then the answer is through the Edlumen platform is yes, we can.
Excellent. So let's go to our next question. So how do we evaluate MDR providers? Do you do an RFI, RFP where you give them a list and a survey spreadsheet? But what should the evaluation process look like?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. I think, it's right there in the question, evaluation, right? Can you do a trial? Can you do a POV or proof of value with the MDR provider you're having conversation with? I think this has got to be key. I mean, I don't know about you, Jim, but I like to drive a car before I buy it, and so I want to see what it does and have an understanding of its capabilities. And so, Adlumin offers a full POV or proof of value or trial, if you want to call it that. Um,
Back to proof of value. So I've heard people say proof of concept,
yeah.
a trial, but when you're saying proof of value, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, so if you don't see value in the platform and by using it yourself, if we're not able to provide value to you, and in my terms, value means you saw something you didn't know in your environment, whether that be overly shared permissions, whether that be expired accounts, whether that be just malicious activity that's happening on your network. If you're not able to deploy this solution into your environment and find value, and that time to value has to be pretty quick, then you don't know what if that investment's worth it or not. So I think that's a big part for me is the MDR provider that you're looking at willing to come in and invest the time and the money and and the resources to show value. If they can do that, then great. You can see if it works for you.
Now, if I were going to do it, so if I were to evaluate an MDR provider, there's some terms out here that are being used in industry like MTTR. We use these acronyms. MTTR, great. Mean time to respond. Um, you think about, what you're going to evaluate is you want to make sure, like, number one, are they going to ask me to swap out my technology stack, or can I bring my existing technology stack and be just as good and get as, good service as if we swapped it out? But thinking about a proof of value scenario, first thing we do is we come up with a plan and say, hey, listen, here's the objective criteria that we want to help you achieve your business outcome, your technology outcome, how well protected we can keep you or your customers. The second thing is what's it like to adopt this service? What is it like for agent deployment? What's it look like for integrating your environment? How quickly can that happen? And then immediately, how quickly or how long does it take until we show that value for how well we're protecting you? And then how quickly can they respond? Is it something where a human is required? Do I need to call them? Is it something that can happen automatically? And so on. But it's really that proof of value criteria when you're evaluating them. and asking them those questions. Can they respond 24/7? Can they do it globally? What happens if I add additional, if I'm merging, like from my MSP that's merging with another MSP, what would that look like?
Yeah, great points. I think the mistake that a lot of folks make when they do a POV is they're looking for the smoking gun. And so, you run a POV for a period of time and then somebody will come back and say, well, see, nothing happened. And so we don't really need this type of service. And I think that's the wrong approach. And so I think you have to set success criteria for yourself right off the get-go. What is it that I need? What is this? Where is the value that I'm getting? And does this service provide that? Let me try it. Let me find out for myself. But really, everything that you just said is about going back to what I said, is testing the relationship. What does this relationship look like? What's my time investment? What's my time commitment? How far is the team leaning in with me to help me understand the things that are happening, rather than just turn it on, run some reports, and then, hey, we did this. Great, thanks. Have a nice day. It's about building the fundamentals of the relationship that hopefully would be ongoing past the POV.
One thing I really liked is that on the proof of value, we had one of our team kind of run through it with with one of our partners, and he was showing that he had deployed the agents, and immediately within our dashboard, there were some key indicators that he was showing off that I keyed on. One was stale passwords, stale accounts. So we know threat actors are one of the techniques that they'll do is they'll get into an environment, they'll breach an environment, they create accounts, and then they may use them immediately, but there's times where they'll say, you know what, I'm just going to install these elevated privileges accounts and then back out and not use them for a while. So maybe I come back at the beginning of the quarter or at the end of quarter when everyone's busy, and then I'll do a breach or some infiltration and compromise. And then, but having a dashboard that says, here's some stale accounts, here's some stale passwords, that immediately highlights that there could be a risky situation there. I really love those high-level dashboard reports that show up just with the first deployment of an agent or inputting of logs.
Yeah, and again, it comes to the relationship. We're not trying to, hopefully, not coming in to expose somebody for well, if it's a malicious activity or ignorance or anything of that nature. It's about, hey, we're here to help, and we're going to show you things that you just didn't know, and help you resolve them.
So excellent answers to number 4 on how to evaluate. Question 5, how do we partner with our selected MDR vendor?
Well, this goes back to, I've used it too many times in this conversation, but I go back to it again. It's to me, it's about the transparency, and the access to the data. I think, Jim, the question is almost like, well, how do you want to partner with? And so if you're allowed to be a full partner, if you would, meaning you have access to the same thing that the same data and the same applications that the SOC does, and you have access to the teams, the threat hunting, the customer success, all the infrastructure that's been built around delivering that platform. That's a good, solid relationship, and that's, I think, that is, again, it's in the title. That's how you partner, is through relationship and through accessibility and through transparency. And so, hopefully coming out of a POV process, you would have an understanding what that relationship looks like, and then from there, the cadence, the frequency, in terms of reporting and QBRs and success, all these things should be part of the decision-making process. How often do you want to meet? How often do you want to get these reports? And we can time those around your needs.
What's interesting is that I was meeting with Will, so our director of operations, security operations here at Lumen Enable, meeting with him now, a couple times a week, and listening to him talk about the partners, the customers that he manages and he protects in his entire team. And there's a passion that he has for them. He cares so much. He wants to protect them. If they've got questions, he wants to respond to them. If there's a new detection type that's out there, he wants to make sure that he has it. He wants to make sure that he can find the threats out there, hunt for threats out there. It's just amazing that our entire security operations team is that passion. And that he really does see it as a partnership. It's not one where it's just, numbers on a spreadsheet or alerts that pop up and they're just automatically handling it. But he's really thinking about them as a partner. And I see this relationship building between us and them, which is what you should look for. It's like we need to meet them where they are. If they want us just to manage alerts, great. But if they want to form a good partnership with us to where we're an extension of the services that they're offering for, doing for them or their customers, then that's what we can do. So it's a good criteria.
Yeah, Will is special, and he's created a special culture within the SOC, and I think you nailed it, right? It is about the relationship you have with your customer, and I think sometimes in this business, it's too easy when alerts come through or when events happen, to say, well, that was your network provider, or that was your this, or the finger pointing becomes obnoxious, if you would, where people don't want to take accountability, and that's something that I see. Again, in the culture that the team has built, accountability as well. Now we're going to lean in. We're going to have an understanding. You are our customer, and this is important. So that to me is just a big part of the selection process. Is how does the team work with you? How do you feel about the relationship?
So now that we've gone through the 5 questions on how to select or things you can ask for an MDR, why don't we go a little bit on the services that we offer here for Lumen?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to kick off the couple of them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So first off, uh, for our services, as we're not just building a service on top of an endpoint or doing just managed EDR or managed endpoint, which gets talked about a little bit, but we're looking after protecting the endpoints, the clouds, and the networks. So threat actors are navigating or traversing through environments looking for that weakest point. So the more that we can offer across that vector, the more that we can integrate into our solution, into our cloud SIM, the better off it's going to be. So we offer those capabilities. We have lots of integrations and are always building more. We do offer 24/7 coverage. So we've got people who are, as well as automation that is monitoring the phone lines, monitoring the call for help, always looking for those alerts and always trying to find those threats that are out there. You want to cover the next ones or shall I go on?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier. The cost of AI, but having our AI detections is extremely important, right? There are things that happen on a routine basis, day after day after day, that doesn't necessarily need a human touch, but AI can solve for that. AI and machine learning have become the way that we scale and are extremely important and have become extremely important in security operations centers. So I think the way that Adlumin is grown and continues uh, to hone the AI detections that we use in our customers' environments, and continually maintain those through our also through our threat hunting events. So this is a big component as well, that we have teams that are continually looking for the next point of attack, and then building the automations around those.
I look They'll live to that, Michael, just as a statistic that we showed in our security operations report, our SOC report we released a little bit ago. If you haven't read it, go ahead and take a look. But it is 80% of the telemetry, 80% of the alerts that we're getting is automated through AI. So we still have humans, we still have people in our security operations center responding 24/7. But it is very costly to build an MDR, one that runs 24/7. You can't have it all being manual. You're going to have to automate it. And the number of AI models are just amazing. For those that love AI or understand and appreciate AI, we are absolutely leveraging that. But if we still need humans. So I looked at some of our detection models. If you go across a MITRE landscape of the infiltration of persistent footholds of different types of attacks and threat actors, it's just absolutely amazing what we're doing with AI in addition to the response. But so go on. So full visibility. What do we mean by that?
Yeah, well, now you got me cooking. So I want to add on to that. So I think because you said something important, and this is a question that gets asked a lot in the field, is, well, how many people are in your security operations center? And I always kind of push back with, I think you're asking the wrong question. I think the question you really want to know is, can we adopt your stack and give you the outcomes that you need? Can we protect your environment with what we have? And the answer is yes. And so I think the AI conversation is going to continue to be an important one in this space. I'm in San Francisco this week, and so you look around and you see the Waymo cars driving the streets of San Francisco, and it's such a surreal thing to see. I still haven't gotten in one yet.
Yeah, me either. I was like, okay, wait.
I'm not quite there yet, but I watched them navigate, the streets, and which is not, San Francisco is not an easy city to drive through, and they do phenomenally well. But the one thing the Waymo car can't do is have the hair stand up on the back of its neck, and that's where humans come in, right? So yes, the AI does the heavy lifting, but it's guys like Kevin, who are leads our threat research team, that they just have that spidey sense, if you would allow me that, where there's something just isn't right about this, but it hasn't quite happened yet. But the hair stands up on the back of their neck, and they know to go start looking for the problem. That we're not there yet. With AI, we will be at some point, but you still need the human touch. You still need Will's team. You still need Kevin's team. They're very important. So I belabored that point enough, probably.
No, not at all. But you think about the automation. So AI is automation, the automated response with the ransomware outbreaks that happen. If you have an attack, if it is going through lateral movement, I mean, it's moving from endpoint to endpoint, looking for something to encrypt, and have an automated response and a reliable automated response that you can contain that threat and resolve it becomes key. And it is possible to do it from human. You get an alert, you immediately identify, understand the scope of an attack, and then respond within minutes. But chances are it's going to be hours, and things have already been encrypted. So you'll have to have backup software to restore it instead, as opposed to just purely contain it from that damage. So automated response I see is key.
Yeah, and that's and that's how the threat actors are scaling, right? I mean, they're not the threat actors are scaling with AI. That's how they're able to they're not hiring more threat actors. They're just using better technology. So
yeah, we're in an AI race, if you absolutely will. As I was going through the security conference RSA, and I was looking about how many are talking about AI, knowing that we've been doing it for years and others are coming up to speed on it. But then you turn around and think, wow, how are threat actors going to be leveraging AI, and are they going to out AI us or out tech us? And so that's always the race that we're in.
all right, so full visibility and control. We've talked about this through our conversation, but I think that this is one of the key differentiators in the Adlumin platform is you see what we see. So it's a bit of the trust but verify model, if you would, where we were built to give to teams to be as a security operations platform. So the idea is we were architected from the get-go with knowing your eyes were going to be in the platform, and that's important to us. And so again, that transparency, full access to the console, full access to be able to run your own reports or your own investigations, I think is really important. So that's a big differentiator for us. We talked about the POV or the trial, Jim. And so, a big part of this is when we ask people to come and participate and start that relationship with us, it's got to be a low barrier of entry. And a 90-minute deployment does just that. And so 90 minutes, if you've got the right people on the call, helping us get this set up, I've seen this go in less. I've seen it go in 45 minutes, but 90-minute deployment on average. And that's that time to value that I was talking about, because within that, after that 90 minutes, very, very quickly, you're going to start seeing some of the data that we talked about. That you said some of your partners had uncovered, like stale accounts. Those things are going to be exposed very quickly. Yep. And then again, we've talked through the conversation about the agnosticism of the platform, really being that 360 view, being that your full technology stack, right? We're coming at it from all angles, whether it be through API, through log ingestion, through endpoint ingestion. We're able to adhere to what you have and see fully into your telemetry, and that's important.
And what if on was the management mud? We didn't really talk about that too much here, but I think that's definitely key, especially for our MSPs,
Yeah.
or any really large customers. So why do you see that as important, Michael?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, for one, data segmentation is really important, and I think this is probably one of the keys into how we're able to give you access into the data, right? Because we're not exposing you to other customers' data, because it is true multi-tenancy. When you access a client's tenant, that's what you have access to, and so I think that's really on the back end, rather than just using, traffic segmentation, having, that tenant be a standalone is really important. Now, as an MSP, you also need the ability to manage multiple tenants in an easy way. And so we do that as well through a partner console. So you see all of your customers in one single view, and you can get your critical alerts into that dashboard. But again, the data itself resides in a siloed manner, if you would.
That's right. And just recently, we released a capability within our platform, within the AdLumen platform, that allows you to create detections across all tenants. And so just keeping in mind that we understand the MSP model where you have a client or a customer, they have their own cloud tenant where you're managing them, storing their information or doing cloud services, just how you view them in your hierarchy. And we're mapping to that and making sure that we can give you that visibility and control, or we have visibility and control over doing that security operations on top of them.
Yeah, it's great. That also comes into play when you're doing maybe custom apps as well, or you're doing some custom detection, like you mentioned, for your entire user base, because you've written a run book that is specific to your customers, based upon some unique key characteristics that you have, and being able to alert on that is really important.
Absolutely. And so finally, the last slide is sort of our breakdown of all of the platform. So kind of looking at it from a comprehensive platform. So do you want to cover this, or shall we both?
Yeah, I think we both can. I think, the thing that jumps off the page for me, Jim, is you said it. It's a platform, right? So it aligns to the frameworks that you guys know, and so the ability to collect, can we take a
Enhanced
pause?
telemetry. Yeah, we're going to darknet monitoring. So enhanced telemetry. Has an account been compromised? Is it been involved in some sort of breach? So providing information, looking at threat feeds and research, being able to apply intelligence on top of these logs to provide some level of enrichment or even attribution. Then detection, so AI based. So are users doing things that they shouldn't be doing? Are they, as we call UEBA? And then compliance, the different frameworks in doing self-assessment, whether you are compliant, whether you are approaching compliance, what stage your customers might be in.
Yeah, I think you keyed in on something there that I wanted to jump on real quick, because we didn't talk about it earlier, but the UEBA is a big component of the platform, user entity behavior and analytics. And I think that this goes back to the AI conversation a little bit, but it is a key differentiator, in the sense that we're not just looking at the speeds and feeds and the data, if you would, through the logs. We're looking at what users do and what they shouldn't be doing in terms of baseline, right? This is the user A has always done a certain pattern every Monday morning, right? But on this Monday morning, their pattern completely deviates from the norm. Why is that? And that triggers, an investigation. I think that's an important piece.
Yeah, kind of instead of rolling through this, one highlight that I see came up recently was notifying stakeholders. So under containment, we saw an active threat. It came up, was flagged by our AI. It got escalated very quickly to security operations. And, we've started to look at how do we automate the response, but the level one critical threats get assigned to a person early that we reach out to a call list. So just being able to respond and notify stakeholders, hey, you're under attack. We've already contained it. This is what we've done. This is the quick report. We'll do a call and get into a call where all the stakeholders are involved, and we'll keep that line active, informing you of everything that you need and how to respond or whatever that we need to do. So I think that's really key as we talk about all of the platform and the end-to-end capabilities. So any final thoughts on our platform you wanted to call out?
Nothing I can think of. I like that we use the word platform, because that is what it is, and it's an important component, and that we are adhering to use. So each of these categories, when we talk about the containment and the response component, that's built through a run book. That's not just a plug and play. This is built upon your organization, your needs, your unique needs. It may be the CEO never wants to hear anything from anybody ever because they just don't, and it needs to all go to the CIO. Well, that's fine. We can adopt to that and adjust to that and make that happen. So the onboarding process to this platform is really important. Again, going back to the relationship, what are your needs? What are your outcomes? You keyed in on, if there's an event, do we open a war room? And then when we open that war room, who's invited to that table? It's about the inclusiveness. It's about the visibility, the transparency in the relationship.
Yeah, the one final call out I'll make before we say thank you and do a summarize everything is for those of you who want to run their own service, who may not want to build it, maybe you do want to build, great, but maybe you want to run your own SOC so you can leverage off our platform as an XDR and offer your own MDR services. Or if you want us to take it over for you, for your customers, then we do the full 24/7 MDR service or somewhere in between. As the visibility, as the insight, we partner with both. But I'd like to think of it as we ran through the 5 questions of the evaluations. We said, okay, first, should you buy or build? And so we provided some commentary there. And what are the core capabilities that should be in an MDR service that you provide or that you're looking for? What's that top criteria? How do you evaluate the MDR partners? And how do you partner with, what's that relationship look like? So hopefully you found this session that Michael and I did of value. And with that, we'd like to thank you so much for listening to us. Michael, any final comments?
Yeah, I would say, as you're going through your journey and selecting an MDR provider, we recognize that this is hard because the market's made it hard. So my encouragement to you would be to reach out to somebody on our team, look at doing a POV if possible, and know that we're here for you to help you in your process, whether it be with us or not.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.